Welcome to our first episode of In the Ring with Punching Out Parkinson's, and I'm sitting here with my friend Dan Novak. Today, we are going to break down the science, stories, and strategies that help people fight back against Parkinson's. We're diving into a big question. How much does genetics play a role in Parkinson's disease? We hear it all the time. My parents had it. Does that mean I will too? Or should I get genetic testing? Well, today we're bringing in the facts, busting the myths, and giving you real actionable insights. So our first question, Dan, is why do my genetics matter if I already have Parkinson's?
We asked that question to thousands of people who have participated in the trial, and here's what they said, that they were curious, and they wanted to know the results of how Parkinson's genetics might have affected them. Second was they feel good. That was 81%. The second was 80% of people felt good about helping the medical community, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that. Third was one that was hot for me back when I was first diagnosed, and then when I went to do my genetic testing, was I wanted to have the information for my family members, and that it can provide some useful information for my family. And then the fourth reason was people are interested in additional trials. If you participate in this genetic study, which we'll talk about in detail, it's a first step in participating in a clinical trial for Parkinson's, something that we should all feel good about, something that we should all feel urgent about, because that's how we're going to help our kids and our grandkids in the future.
Right. How do my genetics affect my children and my grandchildren?
That was a burning question for me in 2008 when I was first diagnosed is this going to kill my children, or is this going to what might that affect them? The short answer is this science gets very deep, and everything we talk about will be done with a genetic counselor, so you don't have to take my word for it. You'll get a chance to talk to real trained people in genetic counseling. But here's a layman's version of what they told me. Only about 3% of people are affected by a version of Parkinson's that came with genetics. And about our survey showed that of the people who have completed the survey already, genetics testing, I should say already, 12.9% of the people had a version of a genetic marker that might lead to Parkinson's. But the 3% I was trying to say a minute ago was only about 3% of the people with Parkinson's got it because of their genetics. It's a very low number. And as far as my children, if I were a carrier of the gene, which I'm not, as my testing turned out to be negative, if I were a carrier of the gene, and they carried that same gene, that would increase their odds from 2% to 4%, as an example. So it's a real small difference if I have genetic markers that we pass on to my kids. But it is interesting for my kids to know that if my kids ever want to get tested in the future for their whole genome or for genetic testing for Parkinson's, they will know that, first of all, I'm not a carrier of any of those gene malfunctions, and so they didn't get it from me if it does turn out to be the case.
Did you say only 3%?
Yeah, it's only about 3% of people with Parkinson's that got a genetic version of it. And in a large part of that 3% is those small groups around the world who have a real distinct familial pattern with the disease. And it seems to carry down in their family. So if you are a person who got it and your parents had it and your uncles had it, then you're likely to be one of these people that falls under that category. But even then, the gene doesn't cause the disease. The gene is a marker that helps us identify what's going on. And I'm starting to get out of my reach here, out of my territory. But the genes do not cause the disease. The genes are just a map that says make you possibly susceptible to the disease. But then there's a trigger, and that's the trigger that we're all anxiously looking for. There's a trigger out there. It may be environmental. It may be trauma, maybe brain trauma. It may be something like that causes the Parkinson's to then go into effect.
That's good to know. Why should or not I get my Parkinson's-related genes tested?
So I hope we've talked about a little bit of that. It's very important for us to, from a research point of view, let me start with that one. Most of the trials to date have been inconclusive. We spend a lot of time testing and a lot of money testing and a lot of frustrated citizens who participate, and everybody comes back and they feel like they did make a difference. If we were going after personalized medicine, if we were able to zero in on people that were more likely to influence or affect the trial, then we're more likely to see results, either yes or no. So the point is, we want to be able to screen you for your genetic model and then take everybody that has that genetic feature into a trial, and then you can find out what goes on underneath that. So right now we're just shooting in the wind, and that's true for all clinical trials for all diseases. Everybody's out there gambling and just trying little things. But if we can get the genetics figured out, then we can zero in and quit spending so much money on these huge trials where you have to have 10,000 people participate, which is impossible to get, to find anything useful. So we want to get it down to where 100 people with a similar genetic profile can be tested, and then we can learn something from that. So the research is very, very important. We're spending a lot of time right now doing that. A second is we're hoping that your genetic profiles will start mapping us into different subtypes. We all know the phrase that I even hate to say now, I'm so tired of it. If you've met one person with Parkinson's, you met one person with Parkinson's. That's true, but that's true of every disease and every feature. So we need to just stop saying that. The research is very important. For us to do future research, we need to know more about our genetic profiles. And our genetic profiles are also starting to help us screen out screen us into different categories, so that as we talk about people who are different on the floor out there around the boxing ring this morning, some of us are progressing differently than others are, and our genetics may have a factor in that. Some of the subtypes that we have out there on the floor, some people are tremor dominant, some are not. One group is more likely to advance quicker than the other group. That's something I would like to know, and that's something that you can learn about as you go through this testing. Third reason is there's no reason not to do it. There's so many good things about it, that helping other people, helping the future, helping us get down to where our research can really make a difference, because we want to find the cure, and genetics is one of the first steps helping us find that cure, and we ought to feel good about doing that. We're going to make it as painless as possible, meaning it'll be free and pain-free, and you don't even have to travel anymore. And all this has changed since we first launched the program 4 years ago. So the program started off, you had to be in a certain clinical department in a city that had a high functioning center for excellence of Parkinson's. You had to be in select cities, and Texas didn't even have one. So I was one of the first participants to go in and be tested remotely. But even then, I had to do a Zoom call. I had to walk around the room. I had to do all this stuff. I had to do a spit test and then mail it off to get tested. And I did not get the results back until sometime later. The good news about the program now is you can participate from anywhere, and we'll talk about that. You don't have to go into a center to do it. We're doing a very simple blood test, and I hate to even call it a blood test. I'll show you the device in a minute, but it's a simple finger prick type testing, and then you will get a phone call. And I forgot to bring my paper with me this morning, but you'll get a phone call and a letter from a genetic counselor, a trained genetic counselor, who will then explain everything to you about genetics. And your family is invited to participate in the phone call, and so they can hear once and for all how my genetic profile looks, how it affects my Parkinson's, and how it might affect the people in the room. So it's very worth doing. And the new stuff, well, I'll stop there and let me get to the new stuff here in a second.
So yeah, just to go back real quick on how I get tested for free. So like, say someone is wanting to get tested, what is the first step that they need to do?
Right. Yes, there certainly is. And the first step is to, we can give you website, phone numbers, links, and all that stuff.
And we'll list that.
We'll list those. So you would call in to, the first step is to confirm your eligibility at our website, which we'll give to you, Parkinson.org, PD Generation.
Okay.
So PD Generation is spelled PDGENE Ration, RATION. So Parkinson.org, PD Generation. But I guarantee you, if you search on anything related to this Parkinson organization, PD Gene, genetic study, this will be at the top of your list. So you confirm your eligibility. So the people that are not eligible, this is open to everybody. Everybody that has a diagnosis of Parkinson's, that's the only criteria. This is not yet for family members and other people. This is only for people with Parkinson's. And it's free. And we're encouraging everybody around the world, all countries, all countries will be encouraged to do that. Right this minute, we're only able to handle the volume in the U.S., and Israel and Latin America. We're encouraging Latin America and Israel people to participate. And then as soon as we get funding, so any of you want to give money to this, please feel free to fund the whole thing. We'll open it up to other countries around the world, and it's just a simple matter of processing the time to get the processing done. So you confirm your eligibility. So the people that are the only exclusions would be. We're going to check and say, are you diagnosed with Parkinson's? Are you over the age of 18? And have you had a blood transfusion in the last 90 days? I think it is. And something like that. So that's the only exceptions to the rule is blood transfusions.
Okay.
Other than that, DBS, everything else is included. Everybody else is associated with that. So that you would schedule an at home or in-person appointment, and they would send you the test, and they would walk you through everything. They have great documentation and videos on every step of this thing, including how to use the tester. So the essentials, a little bit of detail. There's 7 common genetic gene variants. There's 7 primary Parkinson's gene variants that we're searching for. And this study searches for all those. The most common one is called GBA. Not that you need to know this, but if you're interested in you're hearing the words thrown around. Second is LRRK2, LRRK2, associated with familial PD. That's the one I talked about where certain families in European countries, as an example, and Latin America have been associated with a familial PD. And then there's the fourth one or the third most common is PRKN, which is the most common cause of young onset PD, which of course people with young onset PD are very interested in why they got it and what's the differences and all that. And then there's 4 others that we search for. And what's new is we're now opening that up, and this is new since I did it. We're now opening it up to test for some other gene variants, including some non-Parkinson's tests. So, for example, the CDC has a profile of 10 common genetic markers out there that everybody may want to be screened for. Some people don't want to know. I mean, do I want to know that my wife has breast cancer or is likely to get breast cancer? Mm-hmm, yeah. Some people want to know that. Some people don't want to. If you want to, you can be screened for these 10 genetic markers, and if you opt in, they will tell you what your results were in that area. If positive. If you're negative, you'll be notified. So that's something new. So far to date, we've been talking about this study. So far, we've already enrolled 20,500 people to have their genetic profile taken with Parkinson's Foundation. And we're not just keeping this data. We've uploaded over 10,000 of the data sets to global open platforms. There's one called Global Parkinson's Genetics Program, as an example, that has 71,000 profiles involved in that. 31,000 of those people have Parkinson's. The point with the numbers, it's big, and that's how it's going to work. The more people we get tested and open it up across other countries, and it grew from 600 participants 4 years ago to now 20,000 in the U.S. growing. And we do have some candidates from some profiles from other countries around the world already. So here's the results. It's 87.9% of people showed up negative. So I got a note back from my genetic counselor saying I was negative for these variants. That leaves that 12.1% tested positive, and we had breakdowns on what those are. The most common one is GBA. It turns out that GBA we've already discovered something about it that's significant. If you are a candidate for having deep brain stimulation surgery, which I had in 2013, if I had this genetic, if we had known what we know now, I would have been asked to get my genetics tested to find out if I was positive for GBA1, and I would be more likely to have cognitive issues with my surgery. So that's an important feature that's now a fact that you can take action on, that you can do something with. And so that's an example of why anybody going forward into consideration for DBS surgery ought to talk to their doctor about getting their genetic testing done, and what the doctor thinks about it, of course. Mm-hmm. But outside of your doctor, this whole process does not require a doctor's intervention for you to do this testing with Parkinson's. For Parkinson's.
That's great information, Dan.
So the last comment real quick on the testing itself was just the kit. It's called TASSO. It's evidently a commercially available kit, TASSO plus kit. And it's FDA approved. It's a sterile device. It's a little feature. You put it on your arm, it forms a little suction cup, and it zaps you, and you hardly even know you've been zapped. And it drains a little sample out. So it's a skin prick type idea, and it collects it. You pack it back up, you mail it off. You can even get UPS to come to your door and pick up the box. So it's all taken care of. It's got great instructions. It's got videos to walk you through it, show you how it works, and it should be pain free or relatively pain free. It's just a prick.
Quick and easy.
Quick and easy. And so that's how we get that out. And as a result of changing this to a blood test instead of a spit test, we're able to do this whole genome testing that I talked about, able to get checked for a lot of other features besides just the 7 most common Parkinson's features. We can check a lot of other things, and that's because we now have a blood test. And the other cool thing about now versus other tests you may have done in the past, like I did many years ago, did the 23andMe genetic testing, and they tested for certain things back then, but they didn't necessarily keep my full profile to do it for future things. So if something comes up in the future, say, hey, Dan, do you have this gene? It's really important. We don't know. But this test, we will know. We're able to keep our data on file and be able to reinvestigate. Anytime we learn something new, they'll be able to give you a call if you opt in and talk to you.
Wow.
So that's very useful for the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Well, I think that's a wrap on our very first episode of In the Ring with Punching Out Parkinson's. We covered a lot today. The role of genetics, the myths, the facts, what you can actually do to take control of your health, whether Parkinson's runs in your family or not. We want to hear from everyone what your biggest takeaway today was on our first episode. Drop a comment on YouTube, send us a DM, tag us on social media at Punching Out Parkinson's, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.